All right, Richa, thank you so much for joining in.
Pleasure's all mine, Vicky.
Voice.
So happy to be a part of this.
Sure. Thank you for joining on Power the Voice. For the sake of the listeners, I'll give you a gist about Richa. So Richa is a business storyteller, a content writer who ardently believes that universe is made up of stories and they are not made up of atoms. And she feels and she believes that she wants to help people by crafting and narrating better stories and winning with the narratives that are there. In this mad rush for content creation, her simple plea is to be a storyteller first. So straight from the horse's mouth, let's listen from Richa what it means to be a corporate storyteller, how she got connected to the nuances of storytelling. So the mic is yours and the stage is yours. We welcome you, Richa.
Thank you, Vicky. Thank you so much. And thank you for so many kind words. So hi, listeners. This is Richa Wahi. And as Vicky said, I am a business storyteller. Now, you want me to start talking about how my journey in storytelling started?
Whatever you want to start from.
So basically, we are all, all human beings, they say, are wired to tell stories and to listen to stories and even remember them.
Mhm.
And as I truly believe in this quote, that the universe is made up of stories, not atoms.
Mhm.
And, telling stories is the easiest and the earliest way of human communication, the way our ancestors, passed on information from one generation to the other. It was always in the form of stories.
Mhm.
And who has not grown up listening to stories from their grandparents, parents, maybe siblings, teachers, friends? We are all the time listening to stories and telling stories. So I was always fascinated by the stories, and my earliest memory of stories goes back to my childhood, where, unlike my grandparents, because they were not living with us, it was my father, whom we used to affectionately call Baba. He
Okay.
used to tuck us in every night with a story. And as a child, with those half asleep eyes, when I used to listen to them, I would be lost in the world of whatever he was spinning. And I used to wonder that one day Baba's bag of stories will be empty.
Mhm.
But never did that day arrive, because he was always ready with a story. And the story was so contextual. So he used to ask us, what happened with you during the day, in the school, in the neighborhood? And his stories would have characters pertaining to that, and his story will have a message which would solve any of the problems or any of the things that we had in our mind. So he was so magical in weaving those stories, that it ultimately gave us the message which he always wanted to convey, but very beautifully.
Mhm.
And so, just like all the other children, I also grew up listening to stories, and I was writing also since the age of 7.
Mhm.
Because fortunately, I would say now, fortunately, I was born with a condition in which I had flat feet, so I
Okay.
could not run.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
while children of my age group were running track and field events, athletics, I could not participate because I couldn't run properly. And so while they were doing the events, they were winning accolades there, I was just scribbling things on my notepad. And that's how I wrote my first story at the age of 7, which got published in a local newspaper. And
Mhm.
that's how my journey with words started. So I was always listening to stories, writing stories, and there came a junction in my career, a detour, as I say, where I wanted to do something which I always cherished, which I was passionate about.
Mhm.
And I decided to move out of the corporate rat race and do something which clearly brings joy to my heart. And when I thought of what is that one thing, it was writing, telling stories, and listening to stories. And thus was born this person who now calls herself a business storyteller. So when I
Mhm.
say business storyteller, my whole idea is that my stories are unfortunately not for children, but for adults, for corporates in the boardroom.
Mhm.
The message, of course, is something which they can use in their corporate life,
Mhm.
in their in their interactions. Of course, I'm not talking about the magic, the visitor force, or some fairy godmother, but what I'm talking about are things and issues which are prevalent in our boardrooms, and how we can use the power of storytelling, not just in pitching to the clients, but also solving or maybe bringing more zing to our presentations and solving some problems which otherwise we had a very plain Jane approach. So I
Mhm.
think storytelling is the spice which makes your bland day-to-day interactions in your corporate rooms very, very interesting. It makes
Beautiful,
it more palatable.
beautiful, beautiful. And I love the way how, while you were narrating your connection to storytelling, you were also mentioning it as if you were reciting a story. I loved it.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So
Yes.
this is something, Richa, which comes very naturally to you. So all the
Mm,
who are there, I very strongly feel that there is this thought inside their head. But okay, the
mhm,
powerful storyteller.
mhm.
So what are the ingredients of a storyteller, if you can break it down for them, Richa?
See, first of all, I feel for any storyteller, whether is
Mhm.
it's for children or for adults or for anybody, one has to have, one has to think about the context. you
Mhm.
know so even when you narrate a story to a child, you always ask him ki, okay, what do you want to listen, what is it that excites you. So the context is very, very important.
Mhm.
Whether you narrate, whatever is your age group of your target audiences, whether these are some 40 plus adults or whether these are children, the context is very, very important. What is the basis, what is the whole idea about, why you're telling the story.
Mhm.
What is it, what is your take home message here. The other most important thing is the plot, you know
Mhm. Mhm.
like how you begin, what is the message in between, and how you bring it to the end. So the plot is very important, the context is very, very important. And like any other story, there has to be a twist, you know
Mhm.
a place from where your see, otherwise there is no difference between an anecdote and a story. Why is a story a story and not an anecdote?
Mhm.
Because there is some unexpected twist which happens, which changes the scenario and brings home a message.
Mhm.
So these are certain things one has to always keep in mind when you're telling a story, whether it is to your an adult or whether it's to a child. That there has to be a context, there is a plot, there is a hero, there
Mhm.
is an anti-hero, and there is an unexpected twist.
Mhm.
And in the end, it always has to be a resolution. So these are certain things one should always keep in mind when you're telling a story. Of course, in the business context, I would say the context is the most important thing. you
Mhm.
know
Mhm.
so whatever your team or whatever the audience demands, you have to tell the story according to that. So
Mhm.
context is the most important thing.
So with
Yes.
regard to corporate storytelling, Richa, if you can give an example,
Mhm.
if you can say a statement in a very plain Jane manner, and you can convert
Mhm.
into a proper storytelling, a corporate storytelling, I think the listeners will be able to understand how exactly it navigated. Would you like to do that?
Okay. I
I'm so
mean,
sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm putting you on the spot. I'll.
no, 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 no. What should I say? So, for example, there is a situation wherein I'm addressing an audience, and
Mhm.
I want to tell them the power of talking. I'm talking about the power of living in now, in the present moment.
Okay. Okay.
So I can go on talking about, oh, hello, one has to live in now. This is the moment. I can give you phrases like, this is to be done. Or what I can tell you is that I can simply tell you a story. And my very famous go to story is the story of a Chinese farmer, which I
Okay.
call the maybe story. Now, there is a farmer who lives in a land, and he has a few horses, a couple of them, and he's tilling his fields and living his very mundane life. But one day, his horse ran away. And just a second.
No
So his
worries.
horse ran away. So the villagers, his neighbors, they come and they say, Ki, oh, so sorry, your horse ran away, so bad. So the farmer says, maybe, you know. The next day, the horse comes back, but brings along with him 7, 8 other horses. So now the same set of villagers, they come and say, oh, wow, now you have 8 horses. Till yesterday, you did not even have one. That one also had run away. So very good, huh? So the farmer again says, looks around and says, yeah, maybe. The third day, while, trying to train those new horses, his son suffers a fall and has a fracture.
Okay.
So again, the same set of villagers, his neighbors, they come, oh my God, your son has a fall, so bad. We were happy you had horses, but now see what has happened. The farmer again retorts saying, maybe. On the fourth day, the army comes, the army personnel, they come to recruit youngsters for the, new army positions. It's a rule that you have to serve in the army for 2 years. But because the son has had a fall, he's fractured his leg. So he's pardoned off and he's not recruited. And again, the villagers come and they say, oh, wow, your son escapes the two-year tough military posting that everyone has to do. Very lucky, huh? This is so good. Again, the farmer gets up and says, maybe. So the idea is that anything in life can have a positive or a negative connotation in times to come.
Beautiful.
If we keep on worrying about it, if we keep on thinking about it, there is no point. What we lose in that worrying is that present moment, which you can enjoy in peace and happiness. So anything, any decision that you take today, whether it's the merger of a company, whether it's an acquisition, whether it's leaving a job, taking a new one, can have either a positive or a negative connotation. That's not in your hand. No matter how much you think, no matter how much you plan, things can go astray. But what you have in your hand is this present moment. That's why living in the present moment, which we call the mindfulness, we said practice mindfulness, that be in the moment, enjoy the moment. Even if you have to worry, be in that moment and worry, and that's it. So this is very, very important. Now, had I had given you a big presentation, giving you quotes, talking about this, that, of course, fine, you would listen to me. But when I tell you a story, chances are you will remember the story and the message. And this is like imprinted in your mind for times to come. I have not forgotten the story from the day I have heard it. And it's my very favorite go-to story. If somebody, see, as a storyteller, when you tell somebody you're a storyteller, the first thing they tell you, okay, tell me a story. So this is my favorite story to tell people because I seriously believe it's a very short story and with a very powerful message.
Exactly.
So this is the whole idea that whatever you're trying to impart, if you tell it with a story, chances are people will remember it and remember the message also, and your deal is done, your job is done in a much interesting and easier way. Yeah.
Very interesting. This question was, or this thought was popping in my head, Richa, that I got very engaged with the story that you were narrating and reciting. So there were two that were coming to me. One thing is the person who is reciting the story. The second thing is how much of gravitas the story has. So the question always that pops in my head is the why. Why are certain people we want to listen? Why are there stories that have a gravitas? And why stories get us so engaged? Would you like to talk about these whys?
See, the why is because, when it's all about how you disseminate the information. So again, when I say something in a very typical routine fashion, so first thing is that stories, they break the monotony. Now, if I tell you, for example, that, you have to live in this moment, is that no. But when I tell you, okay, I will tell you the story of a Chinese farmer. I am sure if there are 20 people sitting in a room listening to the story, even you for right now would have imagined a certain Chinese farmer who's tilling his fields.
I actually
And
visualized a Chinese farmer with those
Mhm.
shape mustache.
Yes. So each one of us will have our own unique Chinese farmer.
Uh-huh.
And, he would be, you would be thinking, okay, he's tilling a field and then he has a horse who runs away. So somebody would have imagined the horse yellow or, sorry, brown or black or white. Then when I say, okay, the villagers come, so you would have a certain imagination. So see, you are using a lot many faculties of your brain rather than just listening, you know.
Mhm, mhm,
And because you break the monotony, there is a certain picture that you draw in your mind.
mhm,
So that is why it gets imprinted easily vis-a-vis just listening to some pieces of information, and chances are you will forget it. you
mhm,
will you will just remember, like, say, 20% of it. If I give you, if you, because see, there is an information overload anyways happening everywhere. You are just right from the time you get up, or right from the time you arrive in this world till the time you exit the world, you are just taking in information and information and information. There's so much of overload. But just to break this routine pattern, just to break the monotony, stories do the needful. It's just the same way. I'll give you a analogy here, that we all eat, say, dal chawal in our house
mhm,
every day. We, all of us, this is
mhm,
our basic North Indian cuisine. But when you eat that same dal in somebody else's house, because maybe she's using a different spice mixture, or she's using a different cooking methodology, or maybe she's using a different dal, or maybe she's not doing anything different, but you feel you've come to a different house, so she must be making it in a different way. You might like the taste of it a little different, and you find, oh no, this is tastier, this is much better, or this is very
mhm,
different from what I eat. So maybe because she's used something else. So same way, when we say the information vis-a-vis, when we say it through a story, we just twisting the thing, the presentation, and the way we are giving you the information in a different manner. So
mhm.
chances are that you will remember that and you will enjoy it. Every
Beautiful.
day you take information that becomes very bland, but when I twist it and present it in the form of a story, you like it. You like the taste. It's more digestible, palatable, interesting for you, and you would remember. Yeah.
What are some
That,
of the stories, Richa, that you can remember
hmm.
from your childhood? Whether you saw it on TV or you read it in a magazine or comics, or some person in your family recited them. Some 4 5
Hmm.
things that you can remember that you really associate with, you connect with, and you feel that they have somehow created a subconscious trigger anchor inside you, which has transitioned into a conscious action right now in the present moment.
So see, I am a 80s kid,
Mhm,
and my growing up years, fortunately, I would say again, because no matter how much I hated it that moment, today I say fortunately, we didn't have internet, we didn't have Netflix, we didn't
mhm,
have. What we had was a poor, humble Doordarshan, used to broadcast very selective things, and we used to ardently wait for those things to come on TV. Most of the time, there was nothing coming on TV.
uh-huh.
So, growing up in the 80s, I used to listen to a lot of stories on a channel on radio, which used to come, called Hawa Mahal. I don't know how
Okay,
many of
okay, okay.
people, but I'm sure 80s kid would have heard of it, and it still comes because many a times, when you pass through these buildings which are under construction,
Uh-huh.
most of these masons are listening to Vivid Bharati, and at times I've heard Hawa Mahal being played. So I know
Wow.
that it's still broadcast. It's been so
So
many years.
Hawa Mahal was a radio show on stories.
It was a radio show where they used to talk about a story, and its
Oh,
story can be from some Urdu literature, some English
wow.
literature, some Hindi literature. So that was, and that used to come twice in a day, I think, sometimes in the afternoon and some one
Mm-hmm,
time in the night.
mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm,
I remember earlier days when there used to be big electricity, long electricity cuts. Radio
mm-hmm.
used to be our companion, and we used to listen to that program very ardently, because that was our only source of entertainment. Also, I heard, I saw a lot of stories on Doordarshan like Vikram Vetal and your Ramayana, the earlier Ramayana, Mahabharata that came. So these were the stories that I listened to in childhood. I was also a very voracious reader, so I read everything from Nancy Drew to Sherlock Holmes, and there was one particular story which I'm sure all of us have heard, which is the Pinocchio story, which
Ah.
I was very, very fascinated about. And
Mhm.
I was just facilitating a workshop very recently where, um, I told everybody that draw a character from a story, which you remember. And I also did this exercise myself and I drew Pinocchio.
Mhm.
And the reason I gave to my listeners, to my participants, was that why did I draw Pinocchio and why am I so fascinated is because I feel from your childhood till about your middle age, we're all telling lies so that we can fit in with the crowd. We can fit in with the teenage crowd when we're a teenager. We can fit in with the 20 something crowd when we are in the 20s. And in the
Mhm.
30s, we are again trying to fit in. It's
Mhm.
only
Mhm.
when you reach midlife, most of us, it doesn't apply to all, but most of us, when we reach midlife, or at least this happened with me, that when I reach my midlife, I realized there is no need to fit in, you know.
Beautiful.
So, all through these growing up years, that Pinocchio's nose keeps on growing. But it's
Mm.
only when I reached the midlife, I decided to just cut it off, chop it off,
Beautiful. Beautiful.
and be very, very raw, unfiltered,
Mhm.
and happy. There is no need of pretense, there is no need to fit in. And no matter how many times my mother would have told me that, you are born to stand out, you don't need to fit in, it just does not seep into our minds because we want to be one with our peer group. But when you reach midlife, these walls of pretenses, they just go, you just throw them out, these fences. And that's
Mhm.
when you cut the Pinocchio's nose, because now you're happy being raw and unfiltered. So for
Beautiful.
me, the story of Pinocchio is very close to my heart for this reason, that the day I turned 40, I realized that now this nose does not need to grow any further, because I'm happy being the way I am, you know
Beautiful. Beautiful.
so, yes, so this is what these are the stories I heard. Of course, I was very, very passionate about literature. So, a lot of English literature I've read, right from
Mhm.
Shakespeare to
Mhm. Mhm.
the Indian authors, particularly R.K. Narayan, Ruskin Bond. Very recently, I read Sudha Murthy because my daughter's a big fan of Sudha Murthy, and I
Okay.
realized that she's a
Mhm.
wonderful writer. She writes so beautifully and with such simplicity that she enthralls her audience, be it
Mhm.
a young
Mhm.
child or an adult like me. And very recently, I also got very interested in Urdu literature some couple of years
Okay.
back.
Uh-huh.
So I'm trying to learn Urdu so that I can read the couplets of Faiz, Mir, Taki, and Ghalib the way they were written, not the way they were translated,
Okay.
because there's a difference. So I want to feel the raw energy, the raw talent of these great poets. So yes, that's been my journey with stories.
So
Yeah.
I can feel, Richa, you have a lot of podcast inside you.
Okay.
You are someone who has navigated through radio, movies, comics, literature, whatever and whatnot. So there's
Yes, I
can have
think
a
I think
conversation about. Yes.
everything, I think everything shapes you. And I often tell this to my daughter that I am so glad that I was born in the age of adversity, I would say, because
Mhm.
we didn't have access to so much information. There were times when we were simply bored. We didn't have everything at the click of a button. So because we were bored, we had to do something on our own. We had to devise our own play games. We have to devise our own stories. We had to devise
Mhm.
our own things to pass time. And it was such a beautiful time. And today what I see is, you have laptop, you have a mobile phone which has those apps. 24/7 there is information coming in. Your mind does not even have a second to stop until
Mm.
unless you decide to stop. So
Mm.
I feel it was such a beautiful time back then. And I feel bad for children today because so much of information, and this is an age of instant gratification.
Mhm.
uh, I
Mhm.
mean, you want anything, and everything is there at the drop of a hat, which is not a great thing, I would say.
Mm. Mhm.
Children have to be bored. There is so much power in boredom. Let me tell you.
I love it. Power of
Yes,
boredom. I love this.
absolutely, absolutely. Because it's only when you get bored you realize, you devise things, you tell your mind to think,
Mm.
and your mind is capable of bringing you out from any situation. Let me tell you, we don't
Amazing.
trust it, but we have the power. So, but we don't
I
exercise it.
believe, I very strongly believe in the power of boredom. So I
Yes,
sometimes I create scenarios in my life where I can get bored.
absolutely. It's very, very important. So every
And
time my
the
daughter
and the
comes to,
creativity, I tell you that
yes,
it
yes,
comes
yes.
out when I'm bored.
Yes, you bloom into a flower when you are bored, and when all these things see, today you have to shut these devices off to
Uh-huh.
feel that lack and to feel that space,
Beautiful.
because today there's no space. But back then there was hardly any television, there was no internet. There was the radio also used to play only for certain time. It wasn't like a 24/7 FM channel
Uh-huh.
blaring songs or things one after the other. And so what did you do? We used to connect with our neighbors, we used to connect with our cousins, we used to connect with the, I remember we used to play a lot with our house help's daughter. There was no
Oh.
demarcation, no
Mhm.
discrimination that okay, she comes from a lower strata. So we were all one, you know
Beautiful.
and this unified us, and this benefited us in ways that today I see that I feel that those experiences, they really shaped me into what I am. So I'm so blessed. I was born in a time of adversity, and there was lack of lot of things, so we cherished everything that we got. So I
Mhm.
would still remember how my father used to take us to India Gate on his LML Vespa. It was a blue
Oh
colored
yeah,
scooter.
I read that
And
that whole
yes,
article that you wrote on LinkedIn. So this
so
listeners, please go and check Richa Wahi's LinkedIn link. I'll share the link in the podcast also. On that, she has
sure.
a lot of articles from her 80s childhood, growing up, and wonderful.
Yes.
One of my favorite
Yes.
articles is the Vespa one. Please do check it out.
Yes. So today, when I see children, particularly in Delhi, because I don't belong to Delhi, I basically belong to Simla. So
Okay.
when I see children in Delhi, getting off from their Mercedes, feeling so grumpy and so unhappy, I realize that it is not the vehicle, the thing, the material thing that gives you happiness. It, it, it
Beautiful.
it comes from within. Because the way
Beautiful.
I used to get down from my LML Vespa, I was always happy. I was never grumpy. I was never sad. That
Hmm.
vehicle was not just a scooter. It was my dream wagon, I used to say. It used to take me to places. It used to make my normal days so happy. So whenever I see these things around me, I remember my childhood all the more. That the way I prized that Vespa, I mean, nobody can even prize their Mercedes today. The value that Vespa had for me,
Exactly.
because
Exactly.
because it was an age of adversity, it was an age of lack, and whatever little things we get, we cherish them.
Hmm. Hmm.
Because there was nobody bombarding us with one thing after the other. There were things which used to take time to come, and because they took time to come, and we waited for them with bated breath, so we cherish them all the more.
I
So
remember the last time when we were in a conversation, I mentioned this thing that during our times, like you're an 80s kid, I'm a 90s kid. During our times, the things were cherished, they were lived, they were
yes,
nowadays, what these Gen Z, Gen Alpha, they are doing, they are creating every moment as a content, converting
yes,
moment as a
yes,
content. So then you're not living the moment. You're not mindful about the moment. You just want to convert that into a like, a subscriber, or share, or whatever and whatnot.
see, Vicky, that is something very right you've said, and that's what I also say. My USP, or whatever people I connect with, I always tell them that in this age of content creation, mad influencers, likes, and views, be a storyteller first. There is so much power in being slow and steady, of course. There's so much power in being true to yourself, true to your roots, because then the stories which come, they come from your heart, and whatever comes from your heart connects to people, because you have lived it, you have, it's your heartfelt moment. And that's what I've seen in my stories, that a lot of people, whenever I write, they DM me ki, oh, it brought me back to those days, oh, I
Mm-hmm.
could feel the emotion. So another important thing when you're telling a story, which I missed earlier, is
Mm-hmm.
the emotions. There has to, emotions are like salt, you know, just like the salt has to be the right amount in the food to make it very, very delicious.
Mm-hmm.
Less is also bad, and if you add more of it, you can't even sip one, take one bite of it, you know. So
Mm-hmm.
same way, emotions are like, so emotions in a story, they're like salt. They have to be the right balance of emotions. And what is happening today is, because there's so much of content creation happening and everybody wants to be an influencer, we are just either doing the overdose of emotions, you know, or we are doing emotions at all the wrong places. A lot of them, I'm not generalizing, I'm not saying everybody out there who's got these zillion views and zillion followers, they are bad. No, I'm not criticizing anybody. But
Mm-hmm.
in general, the trend that I'm seeing is, just because it should sell, just because it should be getting a lot of followers, you write anything, you say anything, I don't feel that that trend is
Mm-hmm.
right. So write whatever is heartfelt, and be a storyteller first. You know, content creation can wait. Be a
Beautiful.
storyteller, tell your
This actually
story, tell
happened with
your
me. You know what you're saying? This actually happened with me. So I was working in an organization. There were around 40 trainers who were reporting to me. One of the trainer, he came and he's like, "Sir, let's go forward with this video." I'm like, "Why?" Like, because
Hmm.
particular video has so many views. So we were supposed to do a training, a corporate training, in which we had to
Hmm.
a certain video which can like appeal to the content and the emotions of the people who are there. So that person said to me that because it has amazing views, I'm like, to hell with the views. What about the content? Have you navigated
Yes,
content? For me, content.
yes, yes. Exactly. This is actually happening, and again, I'm not criticizing anybody, but then don't overdo it. So there's one trend which I've seen on LinkedIn and even on other platforms where people
Mm-hmm.
share their
Mm-hmm.
blogs and stories is, selling your failure story. Now, it's very good to talk about your failures because it gives strength to a lot of people, whether it's your personal failure, your professional failure, that's perfectly fine. But if you've not had a failure, you've been fine with your life. And if you've not had a professional failure, it's okay with it.
Mm-hmm.
Don't manufacture a failure just to join the
Beautiful.
bandwagon.
Beautiful.
So I
That used to be
see,
a trend. We had a conversation that used to be a trend on LinkedIn when
yes,
trying to
yes,
create
absolutely.
stories like that.
Exactly. So for example, there are people, great people who have risen from very humble backgrounds, more
Mhm.
than humble backgrounds, very menial backgrounds also. If you've not had that kind of background, if you've been lucky to have a very comfortable background, don't just manufacture it. Don't just create a false, oh, I was also so poor. No, there is no way your journey is any less than a person who's risen from a background even lower than yours. Of course, that's commendable. But if you've risen from a decent background to where you are, even that is commendable.
Mhm.
You don't
Mhm.
have to go back in the past and
Exactly. Don't
you
try to
know
get into comparison and all. Just try to see
exactly,
your graph is
exactly.
growing or not.
Have the gratitude that, okay, fine, God was kind to me and God has been kinder, and I have to work hard. And if you hear a story like this, all I think it should elicit in you is compassion, that, oh my God, if people can work so hard and come from that to this, of course I also should work harder. And I should always have compassion for such people because they've
Beautiful.
traveled a very tough road and reached where they are. But you don't rush into the bandwagon, manufacture a very poor humble background just to be a part of it. This is something which is very, very it puts people in poor light, and I personally don't like it. So when I talk of my childhood and all, whatever it is, I'm not manufacturing. If I was a certain place, I was a certain place. So I'm not going way deeper or way ahead, I tell it. And because there's a lot of authenticity, that's why it connects with people. So again, coming to another point, stories need to have authenticity,
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
no matter how much you cram and things which are not authentic will not come out of your mouth like a story. It will come
Mm-hmm.
as a statement which you've crammed from somewhere and you're speaking, you know. So it has to be authentic, it has to be honest, it has to be having the right amount of emotions, it has to be contextual, and it should always end into a resolution. What's your take home message? What's your take home action plan?
Beautiful.
According to me. Yeah.
We have a dearth of time, Richa. I would love to have a deeper conversation
So,
with you because I know that we'll keep on going and opening a lot of threads. But before we come over to the end of the podcast and we give our parting thoughts to the listeners, I wanted to touch upon one particular thing that we had a conversation last
mhm,
as well about your business storytelling journey and also
mhm.
course that you're planning to launch, which we had a conversation about. Anything that you feel like sharing a bit?
Definitely, I get a lot of DMs about people asking me to teach them the art of storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
And so, of course, I always believe whatever wisdom, I'm not saying I'm a very, very wise person, but whatever I've learned from life, from my mentors, whatever wisdom I have, I plan to make it into a small course wherein we talk about, how the introduction of storytelling, how you can tell better stories, what are the things you need to take in mind, what is the use of the techniques of simile, metaphor, and
Mm-hmm.
analogy, how
Mm-hmm.
you can use it. So
Mm-hmm.
all these nuances, I would like to put it into a small course and advertise about it on LinkedIn. And I'm happy to give even a couple of free webinars also, wherein I would like people to start their journey of storytelling as it is in whatever capacity they are. Everybody does not have to transform into a storyteller. The idea is that whatever position you're working in, how you can use storytelling then and there. Maybe it can help you with an effective
Mm-hmm.
pitching. Maybe it can help you make your data presentations more interesting, because data storytelling, they say data is the new oil.
Mm-hmm.
So data storytelling is another field which is coming up really well. So whatever I've learned from my mentors, I would like to pass on this in the form of a course, which I would be launching somewhere in 2023. I
Wonderful.
also plan to launch my own company, which is which is under the process, by the name of Tales That Spin.
Oh wow.
So
Wow.
this
So
all is
tails is
the
like a pun, tail and tail.
yes. So there is a story to that also. I have
Okay.
both these names registered with me because I have a side. Some people close to me are doing some work
So
for.
so Dicha, we are almost about to end with this because
Okay,
it's
okay,
of time.
sure.
Any parting thoughts for the listeners?
Um, I would just say that think about the times when you have heard stories, and think about all the stories that you have listened to, or you have narrated, or you have told your own children, and how it has helped you. Why do you remember it? So
Beautiful.
remember just think about that, and believe in the power of stories, and continue telling them, listening them,
So I'd
sharing
like
them.
to thank you on behalf of my team for doing this. Thank you so much, Richa. Wonderful.
Thank you, Vicky. Pleasure. Bye bye.
Take care. Take care.
Bye bye.